We live in a world that romanticizes constant forward momentum, where stillness is mistaken for laziness and starting over is often framed as weakness. But the truth is, rebuilding is not a sign that you've failed. It's evidence that you've outgrown the life that no longer fits the shape of your soul. Think about nature for a moment. Trees shed their leaves, snakes shed their skin. Rivers change course over time. Nothing in nature holds shame for transformation. Only humans do. We attach guilt to the idea of needing to start again. We call it failure. But what if instead we redefined it as refinement, as expansion, as becoming more of who we're meant to be? In 2025, rebuilding yourself means acknowledging that the structure you once lived within, whether it was a relationship, a career, a belief system, or even your own identity, no longer feels like home. And that takes incredible self-awareness. It takes courage to look at your life and say, this no longer serves me. I need something more aligned, something more true. That decision to begin again is not an admission of defeat. It's a declaration of growth. It means you've learned enough to know that staying stuck is no longer an option. It means you're choosing discomfort over dishonesty. Because, let's be honest, it's uncomfortable to tear down what you've built, especially when it's what the world praised you for. But what's more painful is living out of alignment with your own soul. And here's what no one tells you: rebuilding doesn't require you to have the blueprint. It requires you to have the bravery to take the first step, even if it's shaky, even if your voice trembles, even if you're walking into the unknown. Because the very act of rebuilding is the boldest statement you can make, that you believe in a version of yourself that the world may not yet see, but that your heart knows is real. You are not broken for starting over. You are not behind for shifting paths. You are simply in the middle of becoming. You are refining, expanding, transforming, and every piece of your past is a part of that. Rebuilding is not an erasure of who you were. It is an evolution into who you truly are. When we talk about rebuilding, people often rush straight to strategy, the to-do lists, the goals, the vision boards, the 5-step plans. And while those things may have their place, true transformation doesn't begin with action. It begins with truth, raw, unfiltered. To rebuild yourself in 2025, you have to start by getting radically honest about what you feel, not what you pretend to feel, not what you wish you felt, but what's actually there. That might mean admitting you're still carrying grief from 3 years ago, that you're angry at yourself for staying too long in something that hurt you, that you feel ashamed for not being further ahead, that you feel lost, tired, afraid. These are not signs of weakness. These are signs of being alive. We live in a culture that's deeply uncomfortable with real emotion. We're taught to smile through the pain, to stay positive, to keep going at all costs. But ignoring your emotional truth doesn't protect you. It disconnects you. It disconnects you from your intuition, your authenticity, and your healing. The pain doesn't go away just because you bury it. It festers. It leaks into your decisions. It builds walls around your heart. But when you allow yourself to feel, really feel, you create space. Space for release, space for clarity, space for grace. Letting yourself feel is not indulgent. It is essential. Because if you want to rebuild something solid and lasting in 2025, it has to be constructed on a foundation of emotional integrity. That means your outer life begins to match your inner world. No more faking it to get by. No more pretending you're okay when you're not. No more masking pain with business, perfectionism, or people pleasing. It also means welcoming the full spectrum of your humanity. Not just joy, but sadness. Not just love, but fear. Not just gratitude, but anger. All of it belongs. All of it is data. Your emotions aren't liabilities. They're information. They tell you what matters. They tell you where the wounds still live. They show you where the healing is needed. And this year, you get to choose something revolutionary: emotional honesty over emotional performance. You get to stop performing the version of yourself that looks polished and put together and start becoming the version of yourself that feels grounded, present, and real. This isn't about dramatizing your emotions. It's about honoring them, listening to them, trusting that your body and heart know what you've been through, even if your mind tries to forget. Because you can't heal what you won't acknowledge. You can't rebuild what you keep pretending isn't broken. And you can't become whole by only loving the parts of you that are easy to look at. Real change, real, lasting, soulful rebuilding begins when you say, "This is how I feel, and I will no longer hide from it." One of the hardest parts of rebuilding yourself isn't the beginning. It's the unbecoming, the quiet, often painful process of letting go of who you thought you had to be, who others expected you to be, and who you became just to feel loved, accepted, or safe. We all carry roles. Some of us wear them like armor. Others hold them like weights, dragging them through years, sometimes decades, of life without ever asking, do I even want this identity anymore? You may have been the responsible one, the strong one, the peacemaker, the overachiever, the fixer, the one who holds everything and everyone together. Maybe those roles served a purpose once. Maybe they protected you. Maybe they helped you survive in an environment that didn't give you room to be messy or complex. But if you're here in 2025 feeling tired, unfulfilled, or stuck, it may not be because you're doing life wrong. It may be because you're still living in a script that was written for someone else's comfort, not your own wholeness. Letting go of roles is terrifying because those roles gave us identity. They told us, this is who you are. This is what makes you lovable. This is what earns you belonging. But the truth is, any form of belonging that requires you to abandon parts of yourself is not belonging. It's performance. And performance is exhausting. Rebuilding requires a reckoning, a deep inner questioning. Who am I when I stop being the caretaker of everyone else's emotions? Who am I when I stop living for validation, applause, or approval? Who am I when I release the pressure to always be the strong one? It's scary because there's often a silence that follows, a space where old labels fall away, but new clarity hasn't yet arrived. That's not failure. That's the in-between. That's the cocoon phase of transformation. You are no longer the caterpillar, not yet the butterfly. You are in the sacred unknown where real rebirth begins. In 2025, you don't owe anyone the same version of yourself you were in 2024. You don't owe your old self loyalty when your new self is calling you forward. Growth demands surrender, and surrender often looks like stepping away from roles that feel safe but suffocating. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to be true to yourself. It means you are no longer willing to shrink to fit into a life you've outgrown. You are choosing alignment over appearance, authenticity over obligation, and self-respect over self-sacrifice. This is the year you get to ask, what would my life look like if I stopped trying to be what everyone else needs and finally started becoming who I really am? One of the most harmful beliefs we carry, often silently, often unknowingly, is the idea that healing must happen quickly or worse, on a socially acceptable timeline. We've been conditioned to think that healing is a destination we should have already reached, not a journey we're still allowed to be on. But here's the truth: no one says loud enough, you don't need to rush your healing. You don't need to perform recovery. You are allowed to move slowly. In fact, the most profound healing is almost always unhurried. It doesn't come with deadlines, milestones, or productivity metrics. It's messy. It's nonlinear. It often comes in waves. Some days you're filled with clarity and light, and other days you can't get out of bed. That doesn't mean you're broken or weak. That means you're human. Rebuilding yourself in 2025 requires you to unlearn the toxic narrative that says healing has to be quick, efficient, or visible. It asks you to stop measuring your progress based on how functional you look to the outside world. We live in a culture that celebrates fast turnarounds, quick comebacks, the illusion of instant transformation. But real healing, real rebuilding, that happens quietly, slowly, and often in solitude. You might not post about it, you might not have words for it, but it's happening in those small moments when you choose rest over hustle, when you honor your boundaries instead of people pleasing, when you finally say no without guilt. Healing is often less about what you're doing and more about what you're no longer doing, no longer betraying yourself to make others comfortable, no longer ignoring your own needs to avoid conflict, no longer silencing your voice for the sake of approval. To heal slowly is to trust the wisdom of your own timing. It's to say, I don't have to be better by next week, or I don't need to prove how far I've come. It's to allow yourself space to process what's been heavy, to grieve what's been lost, and to acknowledge the depth of what you've carried. Healing is sacred work. And sacred work cannot be rushed. Some wounds don't respond to motivational quotes. Some losses can't be skipped over with positive affirmations. Sometimes what you need most is not to move on, but to sit with yourself in all your messiness and offer compassion where you used to offer shame. And here's something important. The world may not always honor slow healing, but you can be the one who says, I will not abandon myself just because others don't understand the pace of my process. You can decide that your healing doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. It only has to feel true to you. Healing slowly doesn't mean you're not making progress. It means you're making sustainable progress, the kind that doesn't crumble the moment life gets hard again, because you're not just fixing symptoms. You're rebuilding your foundation. You're not rushing to get back to who you were. You're learning how to honor who you are now. In a world that often praises stoicism, celebrates self-sufficiency, and rewards emotional detachment, vulnerability can feel like a liability. We are told, sometimes subtly, sometimes explicitly, that to be strong means to be invulnerable, that to rebuild our lives, we must harden up, toughen up, and power through. But this narrative is not only false, it's dangerous, because it teaches us to hide the very thing that makes rebuilding possible, our truth. Vulnerability is not about oversharing. It's not about broadcasting your pain or putting your wounds on display. Vulnerability is about being seen, not the filtered, curated version of you, but the whole unpolished, in-process version. The version who still cries unexpectedly. The version who doesn't have it all figured out. The version who's still learning how to love herself. Vulnerability is showing up in that rawness and saying, this is me. This is where I'm at, and I'm still worthy. The truth is, you cannot rebuild a life of wholeness by pretending to be okay. You cannot create authentic connections, make meaningful changes, or experience real healing while hiding behind armor. The armor might make you feel protected, but it also keeps you disconnected, not just from others, but from yourself. And what many don't realize is that armor over time becomes suffocating. You start to forget what it feels like to be soft, open, present, human. Vulnerability is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It's the courage to tell the truth about your story, not just the shiny parts, but the messy, painful, complicated parts too. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you stop hustling for worthiness. You stop hiding behind perfection. You give yourself permission to just be, and that is the bravest thing you can do. Because here's the paradox. The more you embrace your vulnerability, the stronger you actually become. Not stronger in the performative, look how well I'm holding it together kind of way, but stronger in a quiet, grounded, unshakable way. The kind of strength that comes from self-acceptance, not self-denial, the kind of strength that allows you to face uncertainty without crumbling, the kind that doesn't rely on pretending, but on presence. Rebuilding yourself in 2025 means learning how to hold space for your own complexity. It means allowing yourself to be a full human being, not a perfect one. It means letting your walls come down, not all at once, not recklessly, but slowly, intentionally, and safely. And yes, that feels risky. Vulnerability always carries risk. There is no guarantee of how others will respond to your truth. But the alternative, hiding, suppressing, disconnecting, is far riskier in the long run. Because when you cut yourself off from vulnerability, you also cut yourself off from joy, intimacy, creativity, and connection. The very things that make life worth rebuilding. There's a myth we've been sold, especially in cultures that glorify independence, that healing is a solo act. That strength means doing it all yourself. That asking for help is a sign of weakness, and leaning on others somehow means you're less capable, less worthy, or less resilient. But here's the honest truth: we are not wired to do this alone. Rebuilding yourself doesn't require isolation. It requires connection. Somewhere along the way, we started confusing solitude with silence, strength with suffering in secret. But the reality is, healing happens most powerfully in safe relationships, in the quiet presence of someone who doesn't try to fix you, doesn't rush your process, but simply says, I see you, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. Those relationships, whether with a friend, a therapist, a partner, or a support group, become the scaffolding we need when we're trying to piece ourselves back together. We are social beings. Our nervous systems respond to kindness, safety, and attunement. When you sit with someone who truly listens, your heart softens. When you speak your story out loud, not for performance, but for truth, something inside you begins to shift. You realize you're not alone in your pain. You realize others have been there too. You realize that shared humanity is the medicine for shame. And let's talk about shame, because it's one of the biggest reasons people choose to suffer alone. Shame whispers, don't let them see this part of you. It's too much. You'll be judged. You'll be rejected. Shame thrives in secrecy, and it dies in the light. The moment you allow someone to truly witness your pain without judgment, the power of shame begins to loosen its grip. And in that moment, connection becomes liberation. Rebuilding yourself in 2025 means giving yourself permission to be held, not in a way that makes you dependent, but in a way that reminds you of your belonging. There is strength in asking for what you need. There is courage in saying, I can't do this alone. There is wisdom in reaching out, even if your voice shakes, even if you're not sure what to say. Often, the bravest thing you can do is simply allow someone to walk beside you through the darkness. This also means choosing your company carefully. Not everyone deserves access to your healing journey. Rebuilding doesn't mean exposing your wounds to everyone. It means finding the people who have earned the right to witness your struggle. The ones who will hold your story with tenderness and truth. The ones who will remind you of your worth when you forget. You don't need a crowd. You don't need a perfect support system. Sometimes all it takes is one person who sees you. One person who listens without fixing, who stays without rescuing, who believes in your capacity to heal even when you don't. Because no matter how strong you are, no matter how capable, you were never meant to carry it all alone. There comes a moment in every healing journey when you stop asking the world to validate you and start turning inward to remember who you are. That moment is a reckoning, a sacred, powerful, often quiet decision to stop abandoning yourself in search of approval. And in 2025, that moment is now. This is the year you reclaim your worth. For far too long, many of us have been taught, directly or indirectly, that our worth is something we earn, that it's measured by how productive we are, how attractive we look, how much we achieve, how perfectly we perform, how well we meet expectations, and how easy we are to love. We internalize this messaging so deeply that we start building lives around proving we're enough. We work harder, hustle faster, smile brighter, shrink quieter, all in hopes that someone somewhere will say, "You're finally worthy now." But here's the truth we must anchor into. You were already worthy the moment you were born, not because of what you do, not because of how you appear, but simply because you exist. Your worth is not something you have to chase. It's something you have to reclaim. Reclaiming your worth means peeling back the layers of shame, perfectionism, and fear that have convinced you you're only lovable when you're performing. It means recognizing how often you've made yourself small to keep others comfortable. It means confronting the ways you've been conditioned to believe you're too much or not enough, and then choosing again and again to stand in the truth that you don't have to earn your place in this world. In 2025, reclaiming your worth looks like speaking up when you're used to staying silent. It looks like walking away from people or spaces that no longer honor who you're becoming. It looks like no longer tolerating being treated as an afterthought. It looks like setting boundaries without apology. It looks like celebrating your own growth even if no one else notices. Because you've learned that external validation will never be enough if you're starving for your own self-acceptance. This reclamation is not loud or performative. It's steady, quiet, deeply rooted. It's waking up and deciding, I am no longer going to live a life built around proving myself. I'm going to live a life built around honoring myself. When you reclaim your worth, your energy shifts. You stop chasing relationships that drain you. You stop tolerating jobs that diminish you. You stop participating in cycles that deplete you. And instead, you begin to choose things, people, habits, environments that reflect the truth of your value. Not because you're arrogant, but because you're done begging for scraps of love, respect, or attention. You know now that you deserve more, not someday, not when you've earned it, but now. Rebuilding yourself in 2025 starts with remembering that you are already enough, and anything you create from this place will be rooted in authenticity, not fear. When you know your worth, you stop settling. You stop hiding. You stop editing yourself for the sake of being accepted. You show up fully, unapologetically, and wholly as you are.